of what we've been doing, but we're going to go more in depth on this. I am going to be sharing with you 50 ways to fold and dye your fabric using the Itajime technique. Now, I came up with this idea several years ago, and I was actually listening to some music in my studio, and the song 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover came on. And I thought, I wonder if I could create 50 ways to, hold on a minute. I wonder if I could create 50 ways to fold and dye my fabric using Itajime technique and come up with totally different results every time. So I thought that would be a fun challenge, and so I tried it, and guess what? It actually worked. I came up with 50 different ways to fold the fabric. Well, I came up with 50 ways to fold, clamp, and dye the fabric. I only used 3 basic folds, which we've already covered in my previous um, live stream. So um, we'll see how that goes. So today I want to talk about 50 different ways to fold and dye the fabric, and we're going to cover some basic color theory. Good morning, Virginia. Good morning, Omni. Ami, is that how you say it? Video is I'm getting some errors on my end, and I don't know if they are affecting what you're seeing on your end. So let me know. So as I was saying, we're going to look at ways to fold and dye our fabric so that we get 50 unique results. And we're going to also cover some color theory while we're at it. So today, and I apologize if you showed up yesterday and I wasn't here, I had technical difficulties. YouTube would not connect to my streaming software. And then the maintenance people came in to replace the blower on my air conditioner and started making a ton of noise. They weren't supposed to show up until the afternoon, but they showed up early. And you don't turn them away because you never know when you'll see them again. So, but we're going to start off with some basic color theory. And I know it's stuff that most of you should already know, but I think it's a good idea to go ahead and cover it again. And as I said, let me know how the audio and video looks. Not sure if I can do much about it right now, but we'll see. It's saying getting some errors on my end. I'm not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. So I don't know. I thought I had all my technical difficulties solved, but it seems every time I do this, a new one pops up. I'm going to continue on because if I stop the stream, I won't be able to get back. I hope it's all doing good on your end. But let's go ahead. I'm going to move on to the color theory part of this. And this is all basic information that you probably already know, but let's go ahead anyway. So let me know if you see this image. And this is going to be an introduction to colors, mixing, and so that we can get our clear, bright primary colors, some muted colors, and some neutral colors. Today, audio is fine. Thank you, Virginia. It makes me nervous when I see this notice of, oh, errors, error, error. I feel like Will Robinson from Lost in Space. But okay, good. So to get started, we're going to talk about how to mix colors, and so that we get clear colors like our bright primaries, some muted colors, and some neutral tones. We're going to do this while we're learning to create 50 unique folds or 50 unique results from folding and dyeing our fabric. Okay? And what I like about Itajime Shibori the best is it creates these wonderful geometric patterns, and I love geometric patterns. So our basic lesson, we're going to learn how to understand how to mix colors and understand how dye strength affects the mixing of your colors because not all dyes are equal. And we're going to learn about how to compensate for that different dye strengths when we're mixing. And then we're going to learn about how to use neutral gray and black and complementary colors to create some muted tones. So that's going to be over the progress of this series. So we're going to create 50 colors or 50 results, but we're going to do 2 a week. So I'm not going to spread this out over 50 weeks. I think it might get a little bit boring for you and for me. So we're going to do 2 a week, maybe sometimes more, because I may have some other stuff that I want to share with you. So today we're going to work on our primary colors. And as you all probably know, the primary colors are yellow, red, and blue. And our yellow is the brightest and the lightest of the primary colors. It's also the weakest color as far as strength goes. Red is going to be the strongest and most dominant color, and it's also the strongest color as far as these dyes go. And blue is a very cool primary and is perfect for mixing up purples and greens, and it's a medium strength. It's somewhere in between the yellow and the red strength. So for this exercise, we're going to be using the dye colors, and these are Procyon MX dyes, and I purchased my dyes from a company called Pro Chemical and Dye, and I believe they're in Massachusetts. In the United States, there's another company out on the West Coast in California called Dharma Trading Company, and they also sell Procyon MX dyes. Their color names may be different, but when it comes to the primary colors, it's the exact same dye. So I will be using sun yellow for our yellow. For the red, I'm going to be using a mixture of 2 different reds, and that's strongest red and mixing red. And the reason for that is the strongest red leans a little blue, so we add a little bit of the mixing red to counteract that. And for the blue, we're going to be using mixing blue. And let me go back to the strongest red. When I mix it, I mix them in equal proportions. So when I mix up my dye, the proportion that I use is 1 tablespoon of dye to 1 cup of water. But I only mixed a half a batch of these because I know I won't use it all. So I did a half a cup of water to a half a teaspoon of dye. For the red, I used 1/8 of a teaspoon of each, the strongest red and the mixing red. So those are our primary colors, and that's what we'll be working on today. Tomorrow or next week, we're going to be mixing up our secondary colors. And we'll mix up orange, violet, and green. So we're going to mix those colors, but I also purchased some ready mixed colors for the orange, the violet, and a green because I want to see what the difference will be from the colors that I mix and the colors that I can buy. Okay. So when we mix orange, because red is so much stronger than yellow, you're going to use a lot more yellow than red. And generally, your yellows are 3 times weaker than your red. So to get a balanced orange, something that's not too red or too yellow, you're going to mix about 3 times as much yellow as you do red to get that balanced orange. And green, the yellow is about twice as weak as the blue. So blue is 2 times stronger than yellow. So to get a balanced green, you'll mix 2 times yellow, blue. So it'll be 2 parts yellow to 1 part blue. And for violet or purple, it's about 2 times blue to 1 part red. So red is 2 times stronger than the blue. So you have to take that into account when you're mixing these dyes so that your secondary colors don't lean too far one way or the other. And we'll talk about that more as we start to working with these and mixing our colors. Okay. And we're also going to move on to learning how to use neutral gray or black to create some more muted tones. So tones, think of like a muted green or like a burgundy color, which would be your reds with either blue, I mean, with either neutral gray or black added to it. And I like to work with either neutral gray or black because you get different results. And we're also going to learn how to use complementary colors to do the same thing. What's great about the neutral gray is it will mute the color while it preserves the undertones. Okay? And if you use black for that, black is made up of a mixture of a number of different colors, and each of the black colors that ProChem offers, they lean one way or the other. So some black may be a little green, some may have a little red undertone to them. So when you mix black with your color to mute it down, it's going to shift depending on what the undertones of that black dye is. So we'll play with both of those and get a feel for how a neutral gray versus black will affect the color. Now you can also mute your colors by using the complementary color, which is the color directly opposite of one on the color wheel. So if you wanted to create a muted orange, like a burnt orange, you could use neutral gray or black, or you could actually use a blue, which will give you the same effect. So, but I say the same effect, but it might be slightly different. So we're going to play with both of those. Okay. So that's a quick down and dirty talk about color and color theory. There's so much more than that. And if you want to learn more, I'm going to recommend a class from a young lady called Jane Dunawall. And everything I know about color, I learned from her class when I took it from her. And I'm going to say it's the most excellent class I've ever taken on color, because before that, I'd read books and everything, but I just didn't really get it until I took that class from her. And I know she has a class starting online this month. So if you're interested in that, let me put her name in the chat. And I suggest you go look her up. And now, she didn't pay me or ask me to promote this. I just know how much I learned from her. So it's something I think if you're interested in, you might want to go and take a look. Now I'm going to switch to overhead camera, and we're going to talk about some of the supplies that I'll be using and talk about some of the things that you might want to have on hand if you want to try the Itajime technique. And for some reason, I can never say that word without starting it and then have to go back and say it again. So let me go ahead and switch to the overhead camera, and we'll take a look at those items. Okay, so I have my handy dandy tray here, and on this I have a number of different items. First, I have my mask, because when you're mixing dyes, you definitely want to wear your mask. These dyes are very fine powder, and if you don't wear your mask, you might risk breathing in some of that powder. And you also want to wear some gloves. I'm trying to use these heavy-duty gloves instead of using disposable gloves. I'm trying to get away from using so many disposable supplies. And here are the dyes that I've already mixed up. And I didn't show you the mixing of this because these are just a simple one color using the formula. So this is our sun yellow. This is the blue, and this is a mixing blue. It's called mixing blue. And this is the red that I mixed up with equal amounts of strongest red and mixing red. So those are the dyes. I'll put those over here out of the way. And for the Itajime, the whole process with Itajime is you fold your fabric into accordion style folds. And we're going to start off with the most basic fold of all, which is the square fold. It's the easiest, and it's the first one I like to teach people. And then you clamp some type of physical item onto the fabric. And what that does is wherever that item is at, it prevents the dye from going into those areas. And so here I have a number of different physical items, and I have a number, they're made out of a number of different materials. These are some square triangles that I cut out of masonite. Okay. The only thing I don't like about these is they do absorb the dye, but you could cover them with plastic wrap ahead of time if you want. So they absorb the dye, but I just leave them soaking in water for a few hours to leach out as much of that dye as possible. These are also some triangles that I had cut from some ceramic tiles. So we were having a bathroom remodel and I had the guy just cut up some extra tiles for me. Some more ceramic tiles in a hexagonal shape. And you always need a pair of whatever resist items you're going to be using. Some smaller hexagons. And this is hard plastic. And this started out in life as a plastic cutting mat that you got from the Dollar Tree. And I took and cut it up. And this was the handle to that mat. So I kept these pieces. I thought they would be interesting to use as clamped resist. You can use plexiglass. These are some odd tiles that I found at Habitat Restore, and I thought they would be interesting. These are some pieces of molding, some PVC molding from the hardware store. And you can always also use paint sticks. So unfortunately, you don't get paint sticks free anymore, but if you have some of those, you can use those. Now you will also need something to clamp with or some type of way to hold the resist onto the fabric. And I like to use these squeeze clamps, but they are a little hard to work. So if you have problems with hamstring, you might want to try some other type of clamps, or you can sometimes use rubber bands. So those are the type of items that I use. I used to have a lot more, but I got rid of a lot of them. When we moved, so I don't have as many. And you can use a number of different shapes. I used to have some circles. Don't have any more of those. Maybe one day I'll cut some more. But go ahead and gather anything that you think will be interesting to shape, to resist with. And remember, you need a pair of those. So now guys, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat for me. Okay. And I will answer the questions as I see them. So I'm going to move on, set this aside, and we're going to move on to the fabric. Now, these dyes only work on natural fiber fabrics, and I generally work with cotton. Occasionally, I will work with silk, but mostly cotton. And we're going to start out with our square fold. And if you've watched any of these already, you know how to do this, but I'm going to do it again for those who've not been here before. And we're going to fold our fabric. I've already pre-folded this, but I'll unfold it and show you how to do it. So this is a fat quarter, or a little bit more than a fat quarter. It's 18 by 27. I was trying to figure this out so that it would fold perfectly, but my math wasn't mathing very good. So to start out with, you're going to take and fold it in half. So you want the long length facing you. You're going to fold it in half. And guys, if I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay. And I did get a comment on one of my live streams on why my folds were so crisp. I do press my folds in. I like things to be nice and crisp, so I press everything as I go. So now this is folded in half. So now I have a 9-inch wide piece of fabric by 27 inches long. So now I'm going to take this top layer, the raw selvage edge, and fold it back so that it meets the original fold. Okay. And then I'll flip it over and then take this raw edge and fold it back. Now what I do here to get a perfect square is I measure this, which should be approximately 4.5 inches. And then I make each of my folds in the opposite direction so that they are 4.5 inches. And this is just a simple accordion fold, just like you would do if you're trying to make a fan. Okay. Now, you'll notice I don't have a full fold here. I tried to figure out the math so that I would get a full fold, and I didn't get it on this one, but I got almost a full fold on the other two, so go figure. I don't know what's up with that. So this has been folded and pressed, and if you need me to show that fold again, let me know, and I will do that. So after it's folded, my next step is to go ahead and put it in the soda ash solution. And soda ash is what is needed to bind the dyes to the fabric, because if you don't use the soda ash, the dyes will just basically stain the fabric. And what the soda ash does is it changes the pH of the fabric and allows the dyes to form a chemical bond with the fabric. So the soda ash, you can get it from the dye suppliers, or you can get washing soda from the grocery store. It's the exact same thing. Or you can go to a pool supply place and get pH up. The soda ash is sodium carbonate, and that's all it is. So you can get it from either of those sources, and it's all the exact same thing. The cheapest place to usually get it is the pool supply store. So I mix up a container of soda ash, about a third of a cup of soda ash to 1 gallon of water, and you can keep that. It doesn't go bad. Just mix it up and keep it, put a lid on it and keep it and use it as you need it. So I'm going to pop this in the soda ash and let it soak. I already have the other two soda ash. They've already been in the soda ash. And then we will go ahead and start our dyeing. So sorry to reach over the camera like that. My table's only so big. I'll pop this in my soda ash. I like to dye my fabric wet. You can dye it dry. So you can put it in the soda ash and let it dry back out, but I like to dye it wet. You get a different effect if you dye wet versus dry, and that's something you can give it a try and see which way you like it best. I'm going to move this blue piece off the table so I don't get dye on it, and work with my plastic on the table. So I have these pieces already soda ashed, and I also soda ashed a small little maybe 3 by 3 square so that I can have a sample of that color. And I do like to create sample files or sample swatches for myself. So I'm going to put my gloves on, and we're going to clamp and dye the first piece. So what shall I use? I'm going to just open this up a little bit. So maybe I'll use these odd sheet tiles. Do you guys have any questions so far? So what direction shall I put it? And you can put it any direction and it will give you a different pattern. I can put it straight up and down like this, and if I do that, I think I'm going to get stripes. I can put it this way, and I think I'll get horizontal stripes. I think. I can put it diagonal that way. I can put it diagonally that way. So I usually put stuff on the diagonal, so I'm going to try just putting things up and down and see what we get. See if I get stripes the way I think. So I'm going to put the other one on the other side and try to line them up as best you can. And then I'll take 2 clamps, and I might need 4. I'll try with just 2. Okay, let me move that. I don't exactly have that centered. So I'm going to try to center that. And I'll clamp these. And you can either apply your dye with a pipette, I don't know if you can see that, or I put them in these squeeze bottles so I can just use the squeeze bottles, which is what I'll be using. So when I'm dyeing multiple colors like this, I like to start with my yellow, and because yellow is the weakest color, I like to start with the yellow. That way, if I contaminate my red with the yellow, it really won't show as much. Or if I contaminate with my blue with the yellow, because if I have dye on my hands that I don't wipe off. But if I start with the red and then move to the yellow, if I got red dye on my hands, it's going to show up very prominently on this piece. And the same thing with the blue. So I always start with my yellow if I'm working with multiple dyes. And I'm just going to squeeze the dye. Oops, I just got these tops, and obviously I didn't cut the top off, so let me do that. Had to order some new bottles because I ran out. Okay. So I open up the folds and I apply the dye. I want the dye to get all the way into the fabric, and if I only applied it to the outside layers, it would not wick its way all the way through to the inside layers. And you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but I had some dye bleeding over off of this tile. Obviously, I didn't clean it very well the last time I used it. So we'll just apply the dye all inside of the fabric and turn it over and work from the other side. I like to saturate my fabric pretty good because I want a good, almost as solid color as I can get. Now, I gave you the recipe for the proportions that I use. If you learn from someone else or take from someone else, they might use a different proportion. And here's the thing, we're all right, okay? They all work. Some people like a stronger application of dye, and it works. It all works. So I'm just going to put this down in the bottom and apply it. So this is that little 3-inch square. I'm going to apply some dye on it. And eventually I'll move that to a Ziploc bag. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it in this tray with the other piece. And so you can see how much dye that I used or didn't use here. So that's why I didn't make up a full batch, because the dye is only good for so long. It sits, if you leave it sitting at room temperature, it's probably good for about a couple of weeks. If you put it in the fridge, it may be good for a number of months. So I didn't want to waste dye. So I'm just going to put that over to the side and bring out my next color. Clean my hands off. I'll clean my gloves off. So I'm going to work with the blue next. I generally work with reds, the last color I work with, because it's so strong. So what do I want to do with this? You know, let's do what this oddball thing. I have no idea what type of pattern that's going to give us, but let's do it on the diagonal. So I'll put it there, flip it over, and try to match it up. Okay, those look matched up pretty good. So I'll go ahead and just put some clamps on these. And let's do the blue dye on here. Okay, good. This one already has a hole in it. And the same thing, I'll just open it up and apply the dye. So this color is our mixing blue. So this is your basic primary blue. It's going to be interesting to see what this shape's going to look like. And I see I'm going to get some bleeding under that. I'm going to try to put another clamp to keep that from bleeding so much. I can tell it's bleeding underneath my shape. You guys are pretty quiet there. Okay, those extra clamps really helped. I'm not getting so much bleeding under on this side. I'm just going to go in and open up and make sure I've got dye in between all the layers. I'm making a mess on my table. Okay, so now I'm going to take my little square, put it in the tray here, and just soak up some of this dye because I have a lot of dye here. Okay, so that's the blue. Clean off my table a bit. Clean off my hands. Okay, so the final color we're going to do is our red, and that's still in the soda ash soaking. So I'm going to bring that out and squeeze out the excess soda ash. And let's, what should I use? What should I use? I think I'm going to use the triangle. I used a ceramic tile triangle, and I'm going to just put it centered on the fabric. And I'll clamp this, and it looks like I will need another clamp since I used so many on that blue one. So I need to put a clamp across the top here. So let me run and grab another clamp. Okay. Now let's do the red one. I need to cut this top. Okay. So the fabric I'm using, I don't know if I told you that, this is muslin, just muslin from Joann's, which I guess you can't get anymore since there are no more Joann's. And this was what they call their premium quality muslin. It takes the dyes pretty good. I do have another fabric that I use occasionally that will take the dye even better. It's a little bit more expensive, so I didn't really want to use it for these samples. And it's from a company called Test Fabrics, an odd name for a fabric place, but that's the name of it. And it's a very high thread count broadcloth. And out of all the fabrics that I use, out of all the cottons that I use, actually, I think it takes the dye the best. But as I said, it's a lot more expensive than the muslin. Although it'll probably be the same price now that we won't be able to get muslin at Joann's discount prices. Okay, that looks like I've got the color through and through. And now I would just take, where did my little square go? I had a little square that I wanted to, oh, there it is. I would take this little square and put it down in here and let it soak up that dye. And that's really the dyeing process. So let me go back to the other camera. So guys, that's pretty much it for the dyeing process. And if I'd had the live stream yesterday, we'd have done this yesterday. And today we'd have rinsed out and washed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these sit overnight like I normally do. And then I'm going to go ahead and wash those out. And next week, I'll show you the results. But as long as we don't have any technical difficulties next week, we'll be back to the dyeing one day and showing you the results the other day. So this is the first 3 of the 50 ways we're going to fold and clamp and dye the fabric. And if you have any questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat for me, and let me know if there's anything about today you don't understand, or if there's anything that you would like me to cover next week. Okay, so next week we're going to be mixing our secondary colors. So we're going to use these same 3 dyes and mix our orange, our violet, and our green. But I also have some purchased orange, violet, and green dyes, and we will make pieces with those also so that we can compare the difference between the dyes that we mix or the dyes that we buy pre-mixed for those secondary colors. So that's pretty much it for today. Let me know if you have any questions before we head out. Otherwise, I hope to see you next week, Tuesday at 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And thank you again for coming today. I'm going to just wait for a few minutes to see if you have any questions. So I hope everyone is safe from the storms that just came through again. We didn't get much here except for a lot of rain. Luckily, we didn't get any tornadoes like they said we might. So always safe for that. Always glad to be safe from that. So stay safe, everyone. And I hope to see you back here next week. Same time, same channel. Bye.